Alright. Analysis. Why we should buff more than nerf.
In the lifespan of nearly every competitive game, there comes
Banger.
a player that's so dominant that they ruin it for everyone. The man who broke basketball was Lakers legend George Mikan. At 6 feet 10 inches, his unbeatable defensive strategy was to stand near the basket and stop any shot that was about to go in.
Yeah.
You might be surprised that there wasn't already a goaltending rule in place, but before the 1940s, the thought of anybody able to reach high enough to goaltend was unfathomable. In fighting games, rule changes usually come in the form of nerfs and buffs. Anyone with a Twitter account following fighting gamers knows that having a fruitful conversation about character balance can be difficult.
Okay, so he is probably gonna reference fighting games for the whole buff nerf thing, but I want to see if I can try to incorporate maybe possibly FPSs.
It's no surprise given how subjective and personal it is. It's hard to state your opinions on fairness without looking biased, and if you do it too much, you start looking like a crybaby. This is about the time when someone steps in and says, adapt. Not only does adapt make for a badass t-shirt, it's a powerful attitude that shows how resilient you are in the face of any challenge.
Yeah, so if you're playing like Apex and you're playing on M&K, how you adapt is you just you plug this in. That's how you adapt. Oh man, I'm crying a little bit.
And that was precisely the attitude of the Fort Wayne Pistons when faced with Mikan and the Lakers. Their strategy against the most OP player in basketball was to make a quick lead early on and play keep away from the other team until the time ran out. It worked, and the Pistons beat the Lakers 19-18 in the lowest scoring game in NBA history.
What?
Of course, this was only possible because there was no shot clock at the time.
Bro, these guys have like ninja outfits on, and that dude had a big head. What game is this?
And as you might have guessed, this is why they made one. In the end, the goaltending rule nerfed Mikan, but the shot clock rule actually buffed him by making the teams have to deal with him. Why would they make a rule that benefits Mikan? Because the ultimate goal of nerfing and buffing isn't to balance, but to make a game that's fun to play and watch.
Yeah.
People wanted
It's to force gameplay. This is like the same thing in like real fighting, or MMA, or I don't know, taekwondo, boxing, or whatever. Like if the fighters like refuse to like engage with each other with like blocking and punching or kicking, whatever, the ref will step in and he'll do like this move or whatever, symbolizing, hey, you have to engage. And I don't know what the penalty for that is or whatever. You'll see it when like fighters are just like kind of dipping in and out between that like arm range / leg range or whatever. And yeah, this is true for like a lot of sports. I think football, don't they have like a play timer? Like you have X amount of seconds to start the next play or something like that?
to watch and play basketball, not professional hot potato. I think focusing on balance too much can hurt a game in a similar way to how focusing on money too much can lead to an unhappier life. Business scholars call this medium maximization, which Raj Raghunathan describes as the propensity to forget all about the end goal one wants to achieve and to pursue instead the means or mediums to that end goal. Just like how money is worthless by itself because it's paper and metal, balance is also worthless by itself. Street Fighter 1 is the only
balance is worthless by itself unless the gameplay is fun and engaging.
Street Fighter to be perfectly balanced, but it's boring because you can only play as two characters who fight exactly the same. Obviously, this isn't the 5-5 utopia everyone's imagining, and it's because we want to see a diverse set of characters and movesets. Balance updates are ways to increase the frequency of underrepresented characters and reduce overrepresented ones, but there are different ways of going about this. One way is to buff the weak. Buffs are exciting and fun, and it's why we have Marvel. Buffs are so awesome, it kind of feels like a Faustian bargain that'll bite us in the ass later if we wish for too much. But I thought about it, and the worst thing that can happen if everybody gets way too buffed is this.
Oh. What?
This is a hacked version of Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition made by Hungshi Enterprise Taiwan.
Okay, this is a complete exaggeration of like the example of like buffing and versus nerfing or whatever. But it's like, I mean, you see Blanca like teleporting and wall climbing and bouncing from each wall at a site or whatever. It's like he's not even on the screen anymore. And then he's like, what do you do? He teleported through the floor or something? Like, okay, let me see.
And it was called Street Fighter 2 Rainbow Edition. You've got homing fireballs, instant teleports, unlimited air specials, shape-shifting, and yoga flames coming out of knees. Basically, every character got buffed to the point of absurdity, and while it's a pretty dumb game, it was kind of fun, and I remember dropping in some quarters to play it back in the day.
Really?
Where else can you do hands Hadoken into jab, teleport, cross-up, standing fierce? The game might have been dumb, but it innovated many of the fighting game concepts we see today. Rainbow Edition was actually the catalyst that inspired Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fighting, which also featured a faster speed, air specials, a teleport for Dalsum, a fireball for Chun-Li, and a sales figure of over 4 million copies on the SNES alone.
Dang. So because somebody made like a hacked out version where everyone was godlike or whatever, the developer, like the main developers, decided, hey, we can probably afford to speed the game up at least a little bit, you know, where you have like Street Fighter Rainbow, you got, you know, like you said, instant teleports, hands Hadoken, to, you know, like easy 50-50s, and it's like it might as well just be like a button mash game or whatever. It's like the version before that was probably insanely slow and not so fun. So the devs saw that and they're like, you can go a little faster.
The reason why Rainbow Edition was so interesting and influential wasn't because they just made everyone do more damage and move faster. It was because they gave the characters new abilities and new options. Now just imagine what it would be like if instead of Rainbow Edition, they made a hack called Gray Edition where everybody was nerfed to absurdity.
Oh.
No more specials, no more combos, no more throwing. We've actually already played this game in 1984.
Oh.
It was called Karate Champ, and it's one of the most honest and balanced fighting games ever made.
Oh, dang!
Nerfing is a good tool for balancing, but it's no secret people generally don't like it. Even Capcom.
Honestly, do you think that game would do well today if it was just like a complete utter graphics overhaul? You know? Like, I mean, all you see is like a high kick and like a low kick or whatever, and it's like kind of realistic, I guess. I don't know what other moves there were, but like if they did a complete overhaul of the graphics and made it like cool and added a bunch of sparks and rainbows and sound effects and impact frames and whatnot, and then instead of like a rock paper scissors thing, they added like the Magic the Gathering color thing, you know, where it's like this beats this, that beat that, you know, so on and so forth. Do you think that game, and it was like still, you know, gray, and it was still like equally balanced, do you think it would like do better? That's a good question.
Has acknowledged this in a PowerPoint slide that's been floating around last year. But why do we?
Ooh, what? Who is this? Capcom PowerPoint slide? Don't greatly nerf. Okay. Buff weaker ones is okay. So don't greatly nerf. You can nerf like a little bit, a smidgen, but just buff the weaker ones instead, dude. You know?
We dislike Nerf so much, even if we understand it's meant to balance the game. Well, psychologically, humans and even apes are prone to what's known as loss aversion. Loss aversion is a theory that suggests that losses hurt twice as much as gains feel good. For example, imagine I offer you to play a game of heads or tails where if it lands on tails, you lose $10. How much money would you have to win on heads for you to be willing to play this game?
Oh, dang.
Psychologists found that people would accept the challenge starting at $20 for winning, which is exactly twice the amount you could lose.
Right.
This suggests that one nerf on your character will hurt twice as bad as one buff of similar caliber will feel good. The human tendency to be loss averse is used by marketing all the time.
Yep.
Why are sales of limited editions so effective? Because missing out hurts, which is why you gotta get that Strawberry Christmas Karen DLC before the season's over.
Yeah, the FOMO. They're cashing in on the FOMO. You gotta understand that if a game is peddling some sort of thing and using FOMO as its main marketing driving device, it probably has like little to no value, if any. Like, come on, gamers. Be better.
While it can be argued that nerfing is a necessary evil to prevent the game from breaking, there are creative ways to do this that can improve the game instead of just making everyone depressed. One of the most hype-inducing changes I've seen was actually a nerf. During the life of Street Fighter IV, Ryu's Shoryuken was altered many times. Originally, you could cancel any version of the Shoryuken by sacrificing 2 bars of meter to make yourself safe in case your opponent blocked. But after a few patches, they removed the ability to cancel the heavy version, which is the one that did the most damage.
Ooh.
While this seems like a bummer on the surface, it gave players the option to do a safe but weaker version, or a risky but damaging version. When you had the resources to cancel, but opted for the high damage version, you were telling your opponent that you're not scared and you figured them out.
Okay, so the main reason that they did that nerf was to give players more agency. Because in the previous version, you would always use heavy Dragon Punch, and depending on whether or not it hit, you could just cancel out of it. Now, it's more of a, you have to be skillful to, do I use the medium version or do I use the heavy version? You have an actual choice.
I mean, there's making a statement and then there's just going ham. That is, what is he doing? I think he's going for the record.
This nerf was clever because it gave the player a new way to express themselves at the cost of some damage and safety. In contrast, if we look at Ryu's Shoryuken nerf for Season 2 of Street Fighter V, they just removed its ability to do a meterless invincible uppercut.
Ooh. They
actually removed every move like this from the game, which caused some controversy. Predictably, the most common reaction to this was about balance. You often hear things like, "Welcome to what it's like to be Guile," or "Ryu is dead." But what about its impact on the game's fun? Did this nerf make the game more exciting? Did it make for more creative strategies?
Bro, what? No, you can't see.
Did this allow the player to express themselves in new ways? It might have helped balance the game by making the characters more similar to each other, but as I mentioned before, balance is worthless by itself. Pro player Infiltration actually benefited from this nerf, but still disagreed with it because he felt it made the game less exciting.
무적 시간을 그렇게 조정한 거는 좀 스파 역사를 확 바꿔버리는 좀 개인적으로.
Bro, the whole excitement argument, like, unless you're like a person that mains this dude's like main character, and like you can keep up with what's going on, and you're at that level to understand the intricacies of like a match, no one cares about the whole excitement thing. Like, come on. Like, even if you how? Like, if one move just, what was it? Like, he doesn't get invincible anymore. There's no invincible Dragon Punch. The game's not exciting anymore. Like, I don't know.
마음에 안 드는 변경점이고.
If you look at updates to fighting games like your typical Supers, Ultras, and Ultimates, characters end up overall with more options and more abilities, not the other way around. With more characters and more mechanics, it starts to look like a nightmare for balance, but you also have more ways to solve problems. A hard matchup can seem more manageable if you can choose from more specials, ultras, or isms, and people like seeing their characters do cool new stuff. Because hard nerfing and taking away abilities can be so depressing and kill the excitement, I feel it should be reserved for extreme cases or creative nerfs that can actually make the game more enjoyable. And even in games that don't get balance patches, the players will convene and make rules if things get really unbalanced anyways.
Oh, G-Tab. So like the gentleman's agreement type deal.
Regardless, it turns out people still enjoyed Marvel 2 with its infinites and Melee with wobbling.
Yeah.
The reality is, a broken game can still be fun, while a perfectly balanced game might not even be touched. Even as the target of nerfs by multiple basketball leagues, George Mikan was a big proponent of a buff that players like him could never benefit from.
Yeah. Like, if you're this dude, and you're just insanely tall, and can just stick your arms up, and just, it's goaltending, it's not goaltending, or whatever, like, you have to go with, like, the 99%. Like, come on. Or whatever. And is this like a 99, like, on his jersey or whatever? It's kind of funny. If it is. Like, you have to go with what benefits the sport as a whole. Because if you just leave something in play for the benefit of, like, one person, it's like, he's just going to take advantage of it, and he's going to be winning because of that one thing. He's like giga tall, and he can stick his arm up and his hands over the rim.
Wanted basketball to have a
It was 99.
three-point line because it would give smaller players a chance to score and open up the defense to make the game more enjoyable for the fans.
Right.
In 1979, the NBA added
Bro, what happened to this dude? Let me go back real quick.
basketball to have a three-point line because
Look at this dude down here.
it would give smaller players a chance to score and open up the defense to make the game more enjoyable for the fans. In 1979,
What is he doing? That's like the longest. What happened? He tripped over himself? Oh my god.
the NBA added the three-point line, and Mikan got exactly what he predicted.
Thompson, Curry the three for the lead.
Let me know in the comments how you think balance changes should be done, or if there shouldn't be any changes in the first place. This was Gerald from Cornel Gaming. Thanks for watching, and remember, you can vote for the 9th game at EVO 2017 by donating to charity. See you next video.
Okay. So the whole buff nerf thing, it's like, well, nowadays in 2023, like the video's like 6 years old or whatever. Still a good video, still relevant. Most of the core issues of the whole buff versus nerf thing, or at least the greater buff and the greater nerf, should be done before the game even gets released, you know? Like, where's the quality assurance crew? Where's the game testers? Oh, all the AAA devs are busy firing them. And then when the game comes out, you have massive buffs and nerfs, upwards of like 50% plus or minus this move in how much damage it does, or how big the hitbox is, or so on and so forth. Like, if a game comes out and then all of a sudden it's making buffs and nerfs like above, like around 50% or more, it's like, come on, what are you doing? You couldn't find this like in the beginning, like before you released the game. Like, what are you doing? As far as like, you know, after the game has like officially been like released or whatever, it's like players are going to do what players are going to do to get the most advantage in any way, shape, or form, and you can't really stop them. Because if you stop them, they're just going to stop playing. Like, let's be honest. Like, your game is never going to have more players than on the day one of its release. So if all of a sudden you nerf something like really early in the game's life cycle, and players like see that and they view it as like a negative, then they're gonna, you know, form into two groups. They're gonna either continue playing and just play something else. They're gonna play the next thing that's most powerful, or they're just gonna stop playing. All right, so you can't really stop players from like being powerful, but like the whole buff versus nerf thing, like I'm okay with like the buffs and the nerfs as long as it's like very like minor. As long as you balance the game in such a way that it only takes a little bit of tweaking here and there, then I'm okay with like buffs and nerfs. Like, I think it's fine. But yeah, I mean, other than that, this is a great video. Corey Gaming, 6 years ago, still relevant today. Great one. But yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, I'll see you on the next one, guys. Later.